All right, let's go.
When you see a miracle like that, how can you deny the existence of the gods? Believe it or not, there are some who do. There was a man named who scorned the gods and denied to sacrifice on their altars or do them honor. Nothing was sacred to him. He only looked for the usefulness of things. One day he found himself in a grove sacred to Ceres.
Cut it down.
Sir, this tree is centuries old.
We need the wood. Cut it down.
Sir, this is a sacred grove, and this tree is beloved by Ceres.
It's only a tree that the goddess likes. Say it with the goddess herself. I cut it down all the same.
Sir, please.
Get off me, you pious son of a bitch.
And he tore the tree down.
Sir.
Who's that?
I tree self-seeking. My pain is death learning my one thing.
And what might that be?
That you will never get away with this.
Oh, now I'm really frightened.
Let's see you just fall where you are, but don't leave. Stay there.
But the goddess Ceres heard the cry of her tree, and her mind immediately began to move upon torments that she might inflict.
Yes? There's a place in far-off Scythia. Nothing grows there. No wheat, no grass, no trees. There you will find, huddling in a corner, cold, fear, and gaunt hunger. Tell hunger I command her to visit this brute and establish a home for herself in his belly. I give him to her as a toy. Well, I would go myself, but it is forbidden for hunger and I to ever meet.
Oread flew off to the Caucasus, a bleak and nightmarish region. There, in a field of stones, crouched hunger, pulling from between the rocks with her teeth and filthy fingernails some tiny bits of moss. Her hair hung down in lank and matted locks. Her eyes were sunken and circled. Her lips were slack and cracked. The vault of her ribs stuck out, as did every bone in her body. One could count the knobs of her spine.
Hunger? Ceres commands, or rather commits you? Yes. To go to? Yes. To go to Aristotle and never to leave him until he's finished? Gladly.
Hunger crawled through the air to the house of the victim. As she flew overhead, fields withered and men starved. Birds scattered from her path, too weak to fly. It is night when she arrives at Erysichthon's home and hurtles through the halls to find Erysichthon sleeping in his room. She wraps cadaverous arms around him in an embrace as strong as love, but quite the opposite of love. She breathes her spirit into his spirit, and he begins to dream.
Pastries. Cheese.
He wakes,
Bring me something to eat. Anything. I'm starving.
but he can't wait to be served. He begins to eat everything in sight, meal after meal after meal after meal. But he can't shake this hunger.
This isn't enough. I need more. More to eat.
Baked shrimp and marshmallows, salami and ice cream, liver and donuts, everything in every possible combination. Even as he eats, he is planning other menus and complaining of his hunger. As the ocean ingests the water from the rivers of the world, but still is never filled and remains thirsty and guzzles more and more forever. So he calls out for more.
It isn't enough. It isn't enough.
His gorging empties the larders and storerooms, the warehouses and barns of the city. His hunger is unabated. What is left to sell?
Mother,
My son,
come with me.
Now this part is true, though you may not believe it. His hunger led him to sell his poor, his darling mother.
She doesn't look so strong. She is. We've had her forever. I can't give you much. Just whatever you can. Just give it to me. All right.
With the few coins he received, he ran home to eat. Riding in a boat behind her new master, Erysichthon's mother leaned over the hull and prayed to someone she once knew.
Poseidon, if you remember me, come and save me now.
From the briny deep, Poseidon heard her prayer, pulled her into the water, and changed her. Back into the little girl who used to play along his shores. The salty water licked the years away. Until she emerged. The one who used to play along his shores in childhood and give him praise. These are the kinds of things that the gods adore and do not forget.
Hey, you little girl, listen up. Where's that old woman who was here a moment ago? Did she die when the war swept ashore?
sir, I swear by the gods of the sea that no one except myself has come upon the shore. I swear it.
To this day, at every hour, somewhere in the world, you can catch a glimpse of that child playing by the sea. But let us return to our king. It was not enough. The money she earned him was not enough to satisfy his needs. The emptiness within him was unappeasable. You've seen such men yourself, I'm sure.
It isn't enough. I need more. I must have more.
The godless are always hungry.
More.
Always yelling at waitresses.
I want more.
There can only be one end to such a man. He will destroy himself.
Bon appetit.
Transition.
You've heard of Orpheus, the greatest musician of all time, and his bride Eurydice. was the unluckiest of wedding days.
Orpheus and Eurydice, number 1, Ovid, AD 8. Orpheus, the widower bridegroom, mourned her in the upper world, but his grief is limitless. Inconsolable, desperate, he left the warmth and sweetness of our air. He dared to descend to the river Styx and cross into the underworld. To that dim domain with all its shimmering, varied ghosts he passed, until they arrived at his melancholy heart, found its king lying in Persephone. He knelt before them, drowning in grief.
I don't know what power love has down here, but I've heard that it has some, for it brought you two together. If that is true, that passion moved you once, then listen to me. I've tried to master this grief, and I can't. My bride, Eurydice, will soon be your citizen in the brightness of your years. I'm asking for a loan, not a gift if you deny me. One thing is certain. I want you to keep me here as well.
As Orpheus spoke, the pale Phantus began to weep. Tantalus was no longer thirsty. Sisyphus sat on his rock to listen.
Orpheus, turn around. Eurydice. Your song has moved us, Orpheus, and you may have her on one condition. As you ascend and leave this place, she will not walk beside you, but she will be following. You must not, until you reach our gates, turn around to look at her. If you look at her before you reach the sunlight, she is ours, forever.
I understand.
Hermes will accompany you. Remember, hesitation or doubt, and our gift must be returned. Simple enough condition.
It ought to have been. The singer led the way as they ascended through the murk, the sloping path of the murk. A long way they traveled, almost all the way. But you know what happened. Not quite concerned for her, not quite believing it wasn't a cruel delusion, a dream, or a mirage, he turned.
Farewell.
That was his last sight of her, but he saw it again and again.
Farewell.
Is this story a story of love and how it always goes away?
Farewell.
Is this a story of how time can move in one direction?
Farewell.
Is this a story of an artist and the loss that comes of sudden self-consciousness, or impatience?
Farewell. Orpheus and Eurydice, number 2, Rainier Maria Rilke, AD 1908.
They had to be behind him. He said it aloud and heard it fade away. They had to be behind him, but their steps were so ominously soft. If only he could turn around just once.
But looking back would ruin this entire work, so near completion.
Then he could not fail to see them. Those other two followed him so softly.
Godspeed and distant messages. The golden crown above his shining eyes. His slender staff put out in front of him. And little wings fluttering at his navel. And on his left arm, barely touching it.
A woman so loved that from one lyre there came more lament than from all lamenting women. That a whole world of lament arose, in which all nature reappeared, forest and valley, road and village, field and stream and animal. And around this lament world, even as around the other earth, a star-filled heaven, a lament heaven, with its own own disfigured stars. So greatly was she loved.
But now, she walked behind the graceful God. Her steps shifted by trailing grace and clothes.
Uncertain, gentle, and without impatience.
She was deep within herself, like a woman having a child, and did not see the man in front or the path ascending steeply into life. Deep within herself, being dead filled her beyond fulfillment, like a fruit suffused with its own mystery and sweetness. She was filled with her vast life, which was so new she could not understand that it had happened.
She had come to a new virginity. It was untouchable. Her sex had glowed, like a young flower at nightfall, and her hands had grown so unused to things that the God's infinite, gentle touch of guidance hurt her like an undesired kiss.
She was no longer the woman with brown eyes who had once echoed through the poet's songs, no longer the wide couches set an island, and that man's property no longer.
She was already loosened like long hair, poured out like a falling rain, shared like a limitless supply.
And when abruptly the god put out his hand to stop her, saying with sorrow in his voice,
Eve's turn, around.
she could not understand, and softly answered,
Who? Far away, dark before the shining exit gates, someone or another who stood, whose features were unrecognizable.
He stood and saw how, on the strip of road among the meadows, with a mournful look, the god of messages silently turned to follow the small figure already walking back along the path, her steps constricted by trailing grave clothes.
uncertain, gentle, and without impatience.